being in the other room for a little while. Hopefully it wasn't too boring for you in that. Right, so agenda item 17 then on page 35, which is the land north of Croft Road, west of Hyde End Lane. It's a reserve matters application for 363 dwellings, including internal access roads, garages, parking spaces, suds, open space, play areas and landscaping. And it's before the committee as it's a major application. We did visit this site on the bus tour last year, and earlier it was on a site visit which I did attend myself then. And just hand you over now to the case officer, which is Christopher Howard.
Thank you, Chairman. Tonight I'm here to present the land north of Croft Road in Spencer's Wood. It's a reserve matters application pursuant to the outline planning consent of 363 dwellings, including internal access roads, garages, parking, suds, attenuation, open space, play areas and associated landscapes. The applicant is Taylor Wimpy and David Wilson Homes. This site shows the application site shown outlined in red in the context of South M4 SDL, and it is land to the east of Spencer's Wood. In terms of the site background, outline planning permission was granted for the site in 2014. An overarching permission was granted for the for 900 units east of Spencer's Wood and 3 Mile Cross, together with infrastructure, open space and school. This established a quantum development, general parameters and access to the site. Of the 900 units, reserve matters have been granted for 451 units at land north of Church Lane and south of Croft Road. Approval of tonight's application will take the total of units approved on the site up to 814 dwellings, with a further reserve matters application for around 86 units expected to come forward for the land south of Church Lane in the autumn. This is an aerial photograph of the site outlined in red. The current land use of the site is mostly used as pasture land and is characterised by small enclosures formed by hedgerows, which have been acknowledged by the applicant. A significant majority of hedgerows and trees will be retained within the site layout. In order to acknowledge the landscape framework for the site and respond to the wider landscape and edge of settlement constraints, the applicant has applied character areas to the proposed layout. This includes 4 character areas: the village form along the Spine Road. Taller units have been used here to emphasise a key route. Village form in the southern quarter. Here there are more 2-storey units with greater diversity in unit types and detailing. For the northern quarter, this area is set within established hedgerows, a majority of which will be retained. The building line within this location is less consistent than for other parts of the site to respond to the landscape set in the rural edge of the site. The western quarter is located adjacent to Clares Green Road, where there is existing built form. Design approach to this area is to retain existing landscape features where possible and lay houses out within the development parcels as defined by the hedgerows. Moving on to the site layout, this is a proposed site layout which shows how the application of character areas influence the layout of the houses. The position of the main Spine Road has been approved under the infrastructure application, which fixes the alignment of the road. The applicant has demonstrated that all along during the consideration of the infrastructure application how housing could be delivered within this road alignment. The layout includes 2 areas of play to the east and north of the site, with northern play area shown highlighted in the insert plan. There are 2 sub-ponds to control surface water runoff and used to provide soft landscaping features. The design approach is well considered and ensures there's a good level of separation to the open countryside surrounding the site and the landscape supports the scheme. In addition, the layout pays regard to the existing residential development, with all the thresholds outlined within the design guide met and generally well exceeded. The overall density of the site is 32 dwellings per hectare, with high density along the Spine Roads to emphasise a key route throughout the site. This level of density is in line with the supplementary planning guidance for the South End Forest EON. Density reduces towards the edges next to the countryside and existing residential development. In terms of access, the application uses the established outline planning permission access points. The principal access to the site would be through the main Spine Road and Croft Gardens off Highland Road. The Spine Road has been designed to be 6.1 metres wide to accommodate buses, as the site will serve an important link for the South M4 bus strategy. Additional access points will be to the north and east of the site from Rysh Lane and Highland Lane, which would operate as a one-way loop system as shown. A further point of access is from Clares Green Road. This is restricted to no more than 100 dwellings by condition of the outline planning permission. The proposal is well below this figure, with only 62 units being served by Clares Green Road. In terms of walking and cycling routes, the applicant has carefully considered the relationship with the site with the wider approved development parcels. The red lines on this plan show pedestrian and cycle links with good connectivity to the surrounding areas, and these link in well with existing public rights of way and footpath links surrounding the site. There's a very nice point out. Moving on to the street scenes, this slide shows the apartments located on the main spine road. The detailing of these help break up the mass in the buildings, as does the inclusion of balconies, and the units help define the main spine road through the site. The design approach represents a continuation of the style of development which has been delivered within the development parcels to South of Brook Road. Here we have the areas towards the edge of the site. The applicant has reduced the unit height and applied lower density development in these areas. Detailing such as the brickwork and render help provide diversity within the build form. In terms of building heights, this slide shows how the applicant has considered this with the surrounding countryside. 3-storey development in this focus towards the central development as shown in purple, with this reducing predominantly to 2 and 2.5 storeys towards the edges. In respect of parking, this slide shows the parking distribution with the allocated parking shown in yellow, garages in red and visitors in blue. The parking distribution is considered acceptable by the highways officer with a good level of visitor parking provided close to the apartments and is well distributed throughout the site. The total number of parking spaces is 965, which meets the borough design parking standards and will provide 2.66 spaces per dwelling. Moving on to garden sizes, all dwellings meet the 11 metre depth threshold, and in many cases the gardens are generally wide. The recommendation is to approve the application subject to the conditions set in the report and those in the members' update. And there's just a couple of things on the members' update. About 7 pages of plans, I think, to start with. And a point of clarification on affordable housing. This site needs to be considered in context of the other development sites for the area. I'm just picking these up. The land south of Croft Road, which is shown down the bottom, this is currently being built out at the moment. The land south of Croft Road provided more affordable houses than was necessary for that development parcel, so we've reduced the level of affordable housing on this parcel coming forward, and the affordable housing has been delivered early. Basically, the message is that the 35% has been achieved, and it is in accordance with the Section 106 agreement pursuant to the outline planning consent. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. We have one person pre-registered, which is Nick Patterson-Neal, the agent. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair and members. As members will recall, Outline Planning Permission for Spencer Wood and 3 Mile Cross was granted back in 2014 for up to 900 homes. And the first phase of 276 homes, what is now known as Croft Gardens, is currently under construction. So the principal development here at Spencer Wood is established through the core strategy, the guidance in the SVD for the south of M4 SDL, and of course through the grant of planning permission. And the reserve matters application before you comprises 363 homes, including 31 affordable homes. And as you've heard, the proposal includes 2 equipped children's play areas, and importantly the main spine road connecting Croft Road up to Hyde End Lane has already been approved. We've worked, as always, very closely with your planning, highway and landscape officers in particular, following the submission of the application to enable the favourable recommendation before you tonight. The layout, as you've heard, provides for 965 parking spaces, an average of 2.66 per dwelling. The majority of those are on the plot, with visitor parking spaces distributed well throughout the development, and this fully accords with the Council's parking standards. The application in terms of design is supported by a design statement which explains the design principles for the proposal, and they're consistent with the outline planning permission and approved design code. As you can appreciate from the layout before you, the spine road includes what is a more formal arrangement of dwellings, which continue that provided at Croft Gardens to the immediate south. And thereafter, the development feeding off that primary route assumes a more informal arrangement, comprising a number of pockets of development, really shown on the slide on the screen, which is framed by linear groups of mature retained trees and hedgerows, which are defining and quite a key feature of the arboreal character of the site, and make a significant contribution to the quality visually of the proposal. So this phase of the development provides the remaining homes in the Spencers Wood part of the overriding planning permission, and a reserve matters application is being prepared for short submission for allotments and sports pitches to the immediate north and east. And the development will adjoin an area of Sound which adjoins the council's Clare's Green Meadow. So therefore the development proposed before you tonight is another important step forward in the delivery of new homes at Spencers Wood, and a central part of the council's core strategy. And I fully support the officer's recommendation in favour. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members who would like to go first? John?
Thank you, Chair. I've read the application and it seems to conform with all guidelines, both national and ours. And it is a site that's already got outline plan. One question I would like, and I wouldn't have brought it up, but you've actually put it in your report. You talk about the Eastern Relief Road is well advanced of housing, triggering the proposed Shinfield West Hill. The Relief Road, I believe, is 12 months late. Is there any chance that this road's ever going to be delivered?
You're right, John, in the respect that it was due to open initially, but in terms of where we currently stand with housing delivery, the road's actually a number of years in advance of where it was agreed at the time of the appeals, and it was secured at times of the conditions with the outline applications.
I'm not trying to make any changes about the planning application. I just want you to tell me when you think it's going to be delivered.
That, unfortunately, I'm not the contractor that's delivering that road at the moment on behalf of the university. But I understand that the roads are well underway to rectify the latest problems that they have.
We are the highways authority, and it will become our responsibility.
That's exactly why we're making sure it's right before we take it.
Okay, thank you.
And safe.
Bill, then Angus.
Yeah, looking at the layout on page 63, I noticed a number of the roads actually are non-through roads, they actually come to an end. It would require, say, for refuse vehicles to have to reverse quite a bit in and out of those, I would have thought, on some of the narrow roads. I don't know the actual size of the lighter roads. And also there are, I assume, parking spaces in certain roads, or are they passing spaces?
Parking.
They are parking. Are vehicles able to pass in those roads? Because we have a problem in another site where they're not. They're being used as parking spaces, which doesn't allow two-way traffic for a start.
Yeah, I know the site you referred to. That's a site that was consented under the previous standards and not one of our SDL sites coming forward, which are now meeting completely new standards that will be delivered. The site's been tracked for a refuse vehicle as well as the standard large vehicle, and it can pass in the areas that are required to pass, and it can turn in the turning heads that have been provided that require the refuse vehicles to get in.
It just seems to me there are some areas where obviously it would have to, it seems to me that there are some areas where that vehicle would have to reverse some distance to get clear of the road. If we take up in the northern tip corner?
You're referring to this one? I think you're
further over, that one. If you go up into that corner, the very corner, up, no, down, there, yes.
Yeah.
You're going to have to reverse the vehicle there quite a bit. I can't see where you're turning.
No, the turning over here would be this part here.
So if it's gone further north.
The refuse vehicle could come in, my understanding, have the tracking plans in front of me, but they can turn all of the large turning heads. But this basically would be the place that it would turn and stop. And obviously, it's within the walking distance for all the boxes and different things.
Okay.
Angus and Sharon Malcolm.
Thank you, Chairman. First, a comment. I'm delighted to see with these developments here we have got footpath links into other developments, which was sadly lacking with the first development of Shinfield some 10 years or so ago. My difficulty in a long report is deciding what is totally covered and all square in the outline and what is tidied up in the reserve matter. And there's 2 points on that. Is there within this reserve matters application any requirement or condition for the saying to be open before the housing is occupied, or the saying is actually already open. And the second one is on drainage, which was covered under another application, but is that fully covered as a requirement before any of this housing is actually built? The other question I have is on internal space standards. We've talked about the housing, but there are 154 dwellings within this development which don't have a garage. And I know it has been a concern in many developments that the garage becomes the only place where people can store things. So it's some comfort, if you can give it, that there is sufficient storage space in those houses which don't, or dwellings which don't have garages.
In terms of the garage, the figure that Chris read out earlier was the gross figure, so that's if you took the garage as a parking space, but in the scheme meets the parking standards, with the garage not being classed as a space, but as less, and obviously our standards allow garages, well, we refer to the garage being utilised up to about 50%. And recent surveys that have been done on the new sites are showing that obviously about 30% of the garages are not utilised, so obviously we're kind of in line with where we've currently got. But the parking standards are achieved with that lesser provision of garage being accounted for. Where garages aren't provided by units, sheds are provided for cycle stalls, as well as the flatted areas having great cycle stalls as well.
I didn't question the parking provision. What I was questioning was whether the dwellings have enough storage space in them where there isn't a garage.
In terms of that, the dwellings are designed to meet internal space standards. There's sufficient room for storage within them. The garden sizes, they meet 11 metre threshold size, so there is plenty of room for a shed there, and in a lot of cases the gardens are quite wide, so there's extra room for place sheds within the gardens, should people wish to have those. In terms of sayings, there are a suite of conditions on those on the outline planning consent. One saying has already been delivered, which is May's Farm saying, and the other sayings will need to be brought forward as part of before the houses are occupied. The final question on drainage, I think it was, the drainage principles are established at the outline stage in terms of drainage. The reserve matters gets into a little bit more detail on those principles, and the drainage strategy has been found sound by our drainage officer, so we sort of close look at it, and he agrees to the drainage strategy put forward by the applicants.
If I could just come back, I don't think there are any specific conditions on drainage within this reserve matters application.
No, there's no specific conditions put forward for this reserve matters application, but I've got about
if you're saying they are all fully covered in the outline,
they're all covered in the outline. I've got about half a dozen on the outline, I think. Yeah, we had about 65 conditions on the outline, 62 conditions in total, so a lot was covered then.
Thank you.
Michelle.
A couple of things. I do realise that they aren't meeting the parking standards. However, the flats are definitely not meeting the parking standards as far as this goes, because we're assuming that everybody is going to be taking a bicycle, or in addition to having a car, one car per flat. I'm sure that people are going to be all like that, Bradley Wiggins, and be able to ride all the way to Slough or something like that on their bicycle, but the majority of people are going to be taking cars. Where are you going to put the extra cars? And the second thing is, I'd like to commend the applicant here for actually having a saying attached to the planning application with the houses, as opposed to having one before the planning application for the houses. There's a question of parking space.
Yep. Now, in terms of the parking, the applicant's in the room, and they can probably acknowledge that we've worked with them a lot to increase some of the standards that were an issue around the flats. We've worked with them on various elements, and we have meet the parking standards for the flats developments around the areas that are shown.
what's going to happen is there's going to be a lot of houses stuck in the place. There's going to be a lot of cars stuck on pavements and things like this. Look at Outfield Crescent if you really want to say what shouldn't be done. Outfield Crescent.
Just to point this block out for sure.
Well,
Just to, they are all visitor parking for those flats, so they've designed in a lot of visitor parking close to the flats.
yes, but that's going to be that no visitors are ever going to be able to use them because the residents are going to have to park in them if they have 2 cars.
We have a parking management strategy. There's a parking management strategy secured to the outline planning condition, which enables us to kind of ensure that is managed. So we have that ability. And just to pick up on Outfield Crescent, that's close. That's nothing similar. It's previous standards, an old appeal, a town centre location, and I wouldn't compare it to a site like this.
Right. Thank you. Malcolm.
My usual question for Rory. I've read here that where the 2-lane road is going to be 5.5 metres, I think, isn't it? That's the main one going through, isn't it?
So that's 6.1.
Okay, well, it's 5.5. But on page 59 it says on the lower key roads there'll be a minimum of 4.5 to 5 metres. I thought there was an agreement in the last few months that we wouldn't have less than 5 metres on roads in estates because of the parking on the curbs and so on.
No. In terms of the conversation we've previously had with some developers, is that on the primary streets and secondary streets, the minimum we would have is 5.5. In terms of, or down to 5. In terms of this spine going through, which carries a bus, that's been designed for 6.1. Then that's the primary street, secondary streets at 5.5 down to 5. And then we've got obviously you've got a street hierarchy, which in terms of design terms for the planning, we get down to the mews and the minor streets, which then obviously
that's 4.5.
Narrow down.
And it's not expecting that people would park then in 4.5 wide roads.
It's not intended to, no. They meet the parking standards, and there is visitor parking in located bays not identified to be all carriageways.
Last point then, Michelle.
So the parking is going to be all maintained by CPE, and who's going to pay for the CPE for this area?
No, it won't be. There's certain parts that are obviously private, there's certain parts that will be on public highway, and that's what the parking management strategy is there to review. If something needs to be measured and reviewed, then we have the ability to do that, and if we indeed have the powers in the future to control parking, then that's something that we have the right to look into.
Okay, if there are no new points then, members, on this application, we have the recommendation set out then to approve it on page 36 with set conditions. All those in favour of approving this application, please show. And that's unanimous, so thank you, members. Agenda item 8C on page 67, which is Matthew Reeves Farm. It's another reserved matters application for phase 3 of 74 dwellings, community space, access, garaging, parking, internal roads, pathways, drainage and landscape. Appearance and landscaping layout and scale to be considered, and it's before the committee because it's a major application, and we did go on site visit back in 2005, which I was on there, and the case officer, Sophie Morris.
Thank you, Chairman. I won't repeat the description of the proposal as you've just read it out, so I'll move straight on to the next slide. So the application site is located to the northwest of Wokingham, within the North Wokingham Strategic Development location, and is known as Phase 3 of the Matthew Reeves Farm development. The above slide shows the overall indicative master plan for the whole of the development site, highlighting phases 1, 2A and 2B, which have already been granted reserve matters approval, totaling 255 units. I would just point out, unfortunately, there was a typo that phase 2B actually has 73 units rather than 93 as stated in the top left corner, so apologies for that. These reserve matters, sites that have already got approval, are currently under construction with around 30 occupations on the phase 1 site. The MDR through the site has also got reserve matters approval and is well advanced in its construction. The application site forms phase 3 of the development, which is located to the north of the NDR and in between the already approved phase 2B to the northwest and the area identified for the neighbourhood centre to the east, which has not as yet been submitted for reserve matters approval. The principle of development for approximately 760 dwellings on Matthews Green farm site was established through the granting of the Outline Planning Permission in April 2015. This is a reserve matters application pursuant to the Outline Permission and comprises 74 units, a section of the Streamside Recreational Park, and deals with matters relating to layout, scale, landscaping and appearance. This would take the total number of units with reserve matters approval on this site, on the wide site, to 329. The above slide shows the indicative site layout plan on the right, which accompanied the outline planning application alongside the current proposed layout on the left. The main difference between the indicative outline layout and the current application relates to the relocation of the green open space running through the centre of the site, which is now positioned on the northwestern boundary next to phase 2B. This is considered to result in a better layout and buffer between phases 2B and 3, and no longer has a road passing through it, providing a pedestrian-friendly route up to the section of the Streamside Park. The proposed layout would provide a density of 27 dwellings per hectare, and the proposed dwelling mix is considered acceptable, with the sizes of the dwellings being in accordance with national standards. The dwellings would also accord with Woking Borough Council separation distances, and where minor infringements have been identified within the report with regards to garden depths, these are not considered to be to a harmful extent in respect of the residential amenities of future occupiers. The overall proposed layout is considered acceptable, with open spaces and footpaths being overlooked to provide natural surveillance. Existing hedgerows and trees are proposed to be retained around the boundary of the site where possible, and additional landscaping and planting is proposed throughout the site, which will be detailed and secured through the landscaping commission submission. The parking provision of 167 spaces also accords with Woking Borough Council parking standards and is distributed appropriately throughout the site. The initial submission was for 93 units, 6 of which were to be affordable. These were indicated within the hatched area on the above slide, above the indicative block, which will be the neighbourhood centre. However, in order to ensure that the layout on the eastern side of the site would not prejudice the layout of the neighbourhood centre, the applicant amended the site area to exclude the part of the site which will adjoin the neighbourhood centre until such time that it can be shown that both the dwellings and the neighbourhood centre can be acceptably accommodated on this part of the site. As already stated, part of the area which has been held back from the application included the affordable housing provision for phase 3, the location and number of which was in line with the outline indicative dwelling distribution plan as shown on the above slide. Now that this area has been reserved for the time being to come forward at a later stage, there would be no affordable housing provided within the current phase 3 proposals. However, it should be noted that the applicant is intent on bringing the reserved units forward, which they initially included within the application, as soon as it can be demonstrated that the layout would be compatible with the proposed design and layout for the neighbourhood centre, which is expected to be brought forward in the near future. Officers are therefore satisfied that excluding the affordable housing for the interim period will not jeopardise the overall site-wide affordable housing provision, as the proposed layout in terms of dwelling distribution is in line with what was indicated for this phase within the outline application. With regards to the scale of the dwellings within the application, the majority of the dwellings will be 2 to 2.5 storeys, with the apartment blocks being 3 storeys in height. The locations of these 3-storey buildings are in general accordance with the indicative locations shown on the heights parameter plan provided at the outline stage. This area is indicated by the purple block on the above extract from the outline heights parameter plan. Concern was raised by the Town Council with regards to the design and appearance of the 3-storey apartment buildings, which they consider will have an overbearing appearance. However, as referred to earlier and within the accompanying report, the positions of these blocks are generally in line with the areas identified for the 3-storey buildings at the outline stage, notably along the NDR, an approach which is accepted elsewhere across the borough. Their facade design is very similar to the blocks which were approved within phase 2B, and their positioning in relation to other buildings within phase 3 is considered acceptable. The applicant has provided some additional coloured visuals for Block B, as the Town Council raised particular concern in relation to what they considered to be a large area of brick wall with no windows on the rear elevation. However, officers do not consider that the areas on the rear elevation which do not have windows is excessive in relation to its overall design and consider its detail and appearance to be acceptable. It is further noted that this is the rear elevation of the block and overlooks out onto the car park area for the flats and is therefore not considered to be a prominent elevation within the street scene. The slide also shows the proposed front and side elevations of Block B, which provide further detailing and visual interest, as these elevations will front onto both the NDR and access road into the site. In terms of the overall design and appearance, as mentioned previously, Phase 3 is very similar to Phase 2B and is considered to provide a good mix of variety in terms of design and materials. This slide shows the indicative street scene elevations along the northwestern boundary of the site, which would overlook the open space between Phase 2B and 3. This also includes the side elevation of Block B. The final slide is a CGI image showing part of the same elevation as the previous slide, fronting onto the open space between Phases 2B and 3. In summary, the reserve matters presented here are considered acceptable with the delivery of 74 new dwellings and a section of the Streamside Recreational Park, and is therefore being recommended for approval, subject to the conditions listed in the report as updated within the members' update. I would like to draw members' attention to the update, which includes drawing numbers, amendments to the existing conditions, the addition of a highways related condition, the addition of informative and an update to the car parking table. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. We have one pre-registered speaker then, which is Nick Langerhorn from Linden Homes, Chiltern. Welcome on board. Welcome.
Good evening, Chairman, Councillors, members of the public. My name is Nick Lahan. I'm the Land Director for Linden Homes. I'd like to thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to you this evening. I'd also like to thank your officers, local residents and stakeholders for their time and participation in working with us to develop these proposals. I've nothing further to add to your officers' comprehensive report and recommendation, other than to say I'm more than willing to try and answer any questions you have from our application. Thanks very much.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it there. That was a short presentation. Thank you. Right, ward member is Malcolm, so you've got first dibs.
Adjacent. It's Embrook now, or is it?
So it's Embrook Norris.
It's Embrook. It's now Embrook.
However,
Okay.
it's the nearest. Just 2 or 3 questions really.
If you have the speaker on,
The
please.
affordable homes, it says when you've taken the 19 off, it loses 6 affordable, but they are made up definitely elsewhere to the original value, are they?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, just to clarify, so when the application first came in with the 93 units, that was in line with what was indicated at the outline stage. 6 of those units were affordable. Again, there was an indicative dwelling distribution plan produced at the outline stage, which the application was in line with. And for the reasons that we've identified, part of that site has been held back. We're satisfied that when those units come forward, it'll bring it back in line with being where it should be in terms of the overall affordable housing provision.
Okay. The other one's my favourite question, which road is in. It mentions on page 68, main roads or primary roads will have a width of 5 metres. So that's, if that's the minimum, that's okay for 2 vehicles passing. But why is it only primary roads? Because even if you don't have 2 buses passing in a road, if it's a residential road and people will park outside their houses or near them for whatever reason, they park on the curbs. So can you tell me what the width will be on the less primary roads?
Again, similar to the last application, they vary. So again, with this one, we've ensured up until yesterday, we ensured to have some additional tracking done to demonstrate that we were happy with both the large refuse vehicle that we have in our borough, as well as cars passing, and they can get round the site as required. The parking, I understand there's the comments about people parking on the pavements, etc. But again, in the site, it achieves the parking standards with this scheme, because obviously we have an element of unallocated, allocated and visitor parking. The developer puts forward the allocated parking, and then on the basis of what they promote and the houses that are available, we obviously ensure that the unallocated and visitor spaces are provided. This scheme actually exceeds the unallocated and visitor spaces by 11 spaces, so they exceed our parking standards. So on this site, there's a good spread, there's a good mix, and we're happy with the layout that they've provided.
And you will determine, according to page 70, then will submit their proposed widths to you at the appropriate stage for you to alter according to top paragraphs on page 70.
That's
Will be writing by the planning rather than in advance. Yeah.
That's condition 8 you're referring to, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a standard condition we put on about construction details to ensure that obviously we submit the correct details for us to check and discharge conditions alongside the section 38, which is the detailed design stage.
No, that's it.
Could I just clarify the last one about condition 8, just to bring your attention to the members' update. The condition 8 is actually duplicated within, there's already a condition on the outline, condition 31, so it's identical. So we actually asked to have that condition removed purely because it's already dealt with on the outline submission.
Angus, then Michelle, then John.
Thank you, Chairman. The application we heard just before us and the application we're going to hear after this one both had the first condition under the recommendation saying nothing herein contained should be deemed to affect or vary the conditions imposed by Planning Commission, the outline Planning Commission. Is there a reason that it isn't listed as a condition for this application? That's my first question.
Sorry, could you repeat that question for me, please?
It seems that the application before and after this one both have this. If you look at page 36 in the agenda, and recommendation approved reserve matters subject to the following conditions. Number 1, nothing herein contained should be deemed to affect or vary the conditions imposed by the outline Planning Commission, etc. And I just wondered whether there's a reason why that's not in this application.
Thank you. Sorry, thank you for bringing that to my attention now. I think that's just an oversight, so we're more than happy to obviously add that into this current application as well. There isn't a reason why it's not there.
Okay, and if we look at page 83, flooding and drainage, paragraph 55, at the end it says, the drainage strategy which is submitted to support the reserve matters application will in due course need to be formally agreed under separate application pursuant to the outline conditions. Is that enough to ensure that that will be brought forward without it being mentioned in the conditions for the reserve matters?
It's quite usual for the drainage information to be submitted to support the reserve matters, but drainage is not a reserved matter, if you like. So whilst the information is submitted at this time so we can ensure that the layout can accommodate the drainage details are then subsequently approved under the outline conditions submission.
Okay, thank you. The last quick one is on page 79, paragraph 28, we talk about off-site assisted living units. Has the finance for that already been secured?
I unfortunately don't know the answer to that one, but I'd be more than happy to find out and report back. But we have elected for those units to be built.
Puzzled with something?
No, it's just you saying you're going to come back. Clearly we would have voted on it before you come back.
Just to clarify, the fact that we have elected for those units to be built would therefore mean that there is funding secured for them.
Thank you for that clarification.
And the developer actually is providing them. Sorry, I should have made that clear. Bovis, the developer, is providing them, not Linden.
Right, Michelle?
The outline planning permission for Matthews Green included allotments. I don't have to see any at all in any place here in Matthews Green. Where are they going, and where's the money where's the money going that's supposed to be paying for them? Second question is, I'm wondering if Linden Homes would like to help the first Pembroke Scouts, because originally they were promised a scout hut in the area, and whether they would like to make a contribution to them when they do have to make a scout hut. The allotments?
I would have to refer back with regards to the allotments. I'm not aware of allotments being provided on the Matthews Green site, but I would have to check the outline application for that.
It was definitely in the outline application. It's not here, and I have a feeling where they're proposing to put them, and I want to make sure the money actually follows them, among other things, because they're paying. It's what they're paying for.
The land director is suggesting not.
I don't believe they were required as part of the outline, but we had to double check. But certainly they're not part of this reserve matters application. There is open space elsewhere on the site which is being provided as part of future phases, so it may be that they're included in the subsequent reserve matters applications as they come forward.
If the bulbous part was probably promising it, not yours, but still, it was originally their site, including allotments as well.
Okay, thank you very much for helping us with that. But we have to stick to what this application's for, and it's not on there. It's not. So, John?
Yeah, just one question. This application would have been approved under the old Governance Code 4, Code Level 4. I mean, say, does that mean that still stands, or will it revert back to what currently seems to be the process at the moment?
If you could help us on this one.
I don't believe it's dealt with via code anymore. It's now dealt with as part of the building regulations. So the criteria doesn't disappear, but there's a new set of building regulations that have effectively replaced code.
But they will have to change the condition in the outline application, won't they?
I believe that's already taken place. I have to check with officers, but I believe that happened previously.
Sorry, I missed the last thing. So I was just referring back to the outline permission and description, and it doesn't include the provision of allotments. So I just wanted to clarify that. And I'm sorry, I missed the last point that you raised. Was there a question?
Basically, as this application was approved under the old Level Code 4, which has now gone away, it's been changed. I was just wondering how that will change in the reserve method. It was being explained by the applicant here that the standards remain more or less the same, but you will be removing it as a condition out of the outline. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct. It is dealt with by building regulations now.
Malcolm?
A couple of quick points, these are the ones I couldn't find before. It says on page 80, paragraph 32, that no permitted development is allowed in order to avoid unacceptable encroachment into garden spaces. Do you know how long that restriction lasts? Is it forever or 5 years or forever?
It's
no,
forever. It is, yes.
Okay, fine. And the last one is paragraph 33, where it says the local resident association is concerned about external amenity space, but it said that the upper flats will have a private balcony outside. So that obviously is external amenity. Is there a guideline on how much space that should provide? Because with a garden, it's 11 metres at ground level. If you provide a balcony, does that equate to whatever would be needed outside? Because in midwinter, a chair and a table, it's not too easy to use.
I'm not aware of any specific guidance with regards to the size of a balcony, but the size of the balconies that are provided here are in line. I don't have the exact dimensions, but usually an area that can accommodate a table and a couple of chairs that you can sit out. is deemed
So
acceptable.
specification of an external amenity rather than its size. That matters.
Yes. Something that you could physically get out and sit out on is accepted across the strategic locations on the apartment blocks.
Okay, thank you.
You put up a picture of the blank wall which Working Town Council mentioned. You said it was on a back wall, it's overlooking the car park. Is that now a security issue, that there isn't going to be the surveillance of the car park?
I don't believe so. I'll just bring up the particular slide. As you can see from the image that's been produced, there are still a number of significant number of windows on that elevation. It's not completely blank, and in our view, that is acceptable, and will still provide an acceptable level of natural surveillance across the car park.
Thank you. Right, members, are there any more questions before we go to the vote? Okay, so we've got the recommendations on page 68 to approve it, with the conditions set out. Angus mentioned that for consistency we needed the condition which is on page 36.1, so we need that added. And then there's a number of changes on the members' update, both adding, taking away and amending some conditions and informatives. So if that's clear to everyone, please show of hands all those in favour of approving this application. That is unanimous. Thank you, members. We're on agenda item number 19 on page 91, which is the Arthurfield Garrison. It's a reserved mass application for 179 dwellings, internal access roads, paths, car parking, garages, landscaping and open space. It's before the committee, it's a major application. Those on the committee back in 2004 did attend a site visit. I was one of those. And the case officer on this one is Alex Thwaites, so I shall hand over to him.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening. The application before you is application reference 170686, located at the Arthurfield Garrison. The proposal is a reserve matters application for 179 dwellings with associated access, highways, landscaping and infrastructure works. The applicant is Redrow Homes Limited. A bit of site background. The applicant's site relates to land immediately south of the new Narmar Ride extension and forms part of the Arthurfield Strategic Development Location, or SDL. Outline permission for the north section of the SDL was granted in April 2015, and this established the principle of development as well as the development parameters. So this slide shows the Arthurfield SDL location as a whole. I've highlighted some of the key infrastructure routes. Of particular note is Shearlands Road that runs down through the centre, the A327 that hugs the west boundary of the SDL, and the Narmar Ride extension, again of which the northern section is now built and open for use. This slide shows the northern section of the SDL, the actual garrison section, approved under outline application O2014-2280. In the northeast corner are the first two phases of the development, Parcel 01 and Parcel 02, which are well underway in construction at the moment. The third phase, Parcels A to G, is located just above the application site for this proposal, which is shown in orange. Both the third phase and this application, which is the fourth phase, form part of the Southern Gateway character area for the site. So the outline parameters set the parcels A to J as residential land use. The proposals can go up to 3 stories in height, and the site has a medium density. Open space is also included within the proposal. This is the most recent aerial photograph of the site defined with the site in red. You can actually see part of the Narmaride extension, which has literally just been built just to the north of the proposal, and how it connects with Shearlands Road as well. Onto the layout of the proposal, you can see the parcels broken up by central green spine, and the dwellings are largely 2-storey detached properties. This plan shows the building heights, and again, as you can see, the majority of the proposal is 2-storey, apart from the apartment buildings that are 3 stories in height. These represent focal buildings in key locations, as well as offering good contrast to the surrounding dwellings. The next 2 slides show a couple of house types and street scenes for proposal. So here you can see a couple of the standard house types they will have on the proposal. An apartment and a street scene. It's clear the proposal has taken elements of design found in the surrounding area and also within the wider borough. I touched on this slightly earlier, but again, the application includes a central open space, as well as having good pedestrian and cycle links to both the linear park and the wider SDL. Moving on to the access and movement, the site is accessed off the Narmaride extension in 3 locations. The Narmaride is built and is in use, and that is currently connected to the A327 as well. The proposal includes a pedestrian access onto Shearlands Road, which connects to the wider bridleway network, as well as the secondary school. In terms of parking, the proposal is compliant with WBC standards, and the parking strategy has been conditioned in order to secure the parking across the site remains in place. In terms of the policy standards, the proposal is in accordance with both WBC policies and also the previously approved outline. Additionally, again, just so people are aware, on the outline, specific technical details are conditioned, so these take place in another proposal, but they need to be considered in this proposal as well. So therefore, the proposal recommended for approval, subject to the conditions set out in the report. Just to give a quick run through the members' update, this includes an updated parking schedule and also a written highways update to go along with that. And finally, there are a couple of additional conditions that require further details from minor elements of the scheme. So, for example, one of them is for further technical details of the actual pedestrian access onto Shearlands Road. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. We have one speaker pre-registered, which is Laura Humphreys, the agent. Would you like to come forward? Welcome.
Good evening. You've introduced me. I'm Laura Humphreys from Pegasus. I represent Redrow Homes, who are the developer for this part of the Arborfield site. Redrow have been working closely with Crest Nicholson and your officers in the preparation and coordination of this application to ensure there is a comprehensive approach taken across the wider Arborfield Garrison site. The application has been prepared in line with the parameters set out in the Outline Plan Commission, as well as reflecting the requirements of the approved design code and the Council's adopted supplementary planning documents. As your officers note, the application is for the approval of 179 dwellings on the southern part of the Arborfield Garrison site, on parcels H, I and J, and it represents the 4th phase of development on this strategic site. The developers have worked proactively with your officers to discuss the layout and the design, and addressing their comments and consultation responses. This has ensured that the scheme reflects the Council's adopted standards to the satisfaction of your officers. Overall, we have taken care to design the scheme to provide a comprehensive development which doesn't prejudice any other residential parcels on the Arborfield Garrison, and also seeks to deliver the wider objectives for this strategic site. We welcome your office's recommendation, and we hope that members will also be in a position to support this application. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. There was notice in the report there was no objections from the parish or the neighbours. I'll go first to the ward member, which is John.
Thanks, Steve. I got no problem with it. I'm quite happy with it, and I've discussed it with both parish councils. So I'm fine.
Any other members wishing to? Angus.
Two very quick points, Chairman. The agent has expressed that they've been working with the original developer on the Garden Village principle. Wasn't actually mentioned, but I'd just like assurance from the officers that they believe that that has been followed through with a separate developer. And the second question is, on page 109, paragraph 65, talking about Sang, it says the Sang will be open prior to first occupation. Is that covered somewhere, or should it be conditioned with this application?
So you just go back to the Sang question, that is actually open at the moment. So it's live. And going to the first question. Sorry.
Are you satisfied that the Garden Village principle has been carried on by this different developer?
Yeah, so in the outline there's been a design and access statement approved, which pretty much states that any application that comes forward in the Untitled Garrison has to conform with the Garden Village principles. So that's something that we take into account, and we're confident that's one of those.
Any other questions for members? Absolutely none. Right, if there are no more questions, we will go to the recommendation as set out on page 93 to approve reserved matters. And the document has been through a number of amendments on the members' update. So all those in favour, please show. And that is unanimous. So thank you, members. That's approved.